Good morning and welcome. We're super excited to be opening up the programming for Bloomberg House today with this discussion, which is very near and dear to my heart, having been in the creative industry for about more than 25 years. We are at an inflection point in the media and entertainment industry with two forces coming together, media and entertainment and AI, right? And I think what that says to us is that the industry is changing, it's transforming. The recent headlines tell us so. But media and entertainment is not just about storytelling and being a cultural force, it is a global economic driver. The industry by itself is projected to be $3.5 trillion globally. So when we think about media and entertainment and the disruption, and we'll talk about how technology is doing that, it's a huge reason for us to be discussing that at Davos. So with that, when we think about AI and film production, Utopai Studios comes to the forefront. And similarly, when we talk about audio and voice transformation for both the creative industry and for enterprises, ElevenLabs emerges as a leader. So with that, I wanted to start out with Cecilia and ask you a little bit about what Utopai Studios' vision is.
Yeah, well, 100%. Thanks for having me. And thanks for everybody to come to this breakfast. We believe a new era for media industry is really forming. There's new content formats because of AI. There's new user engagement, and there's new global distributions. And it drives new global opportunities there. So we're not only building the state-of-the-art technology for the industry, but also we're reshaping the entire global media landscape. In 2025, we built a strong production and technology pipeline over the world, and we became the lead revenue generator for the AI and film industry. And in 2026, we're continuously going to push the technology boundary a step forward. We're also aiming to drive more market growth for IP and content and expand market shares and contribute to the global economy.
Marty, the question I have for you is ElevenLabs' proposition is, and I want to get this right, is using an AI audio and agentic infrastructure to be able to transform industries, both media and entertainment and beyond. What does that mean?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. Thanks for having me here. I didn't realize this is the first session kicking it off, so the pressure is on. So to give you a little bit more context, so we are an AI research and product company transforming how we interact, how we interface with the technology around us. So what this means is when we started the company in 2022, we've built the first voice model with my brilliant co-founder, Piotr, that could speak human. It could understand the context of the text and produce emotions and intonation that finally sounded the same way that we speak. And then fast forward to today, over the last 4 years, we continued on that research journey, building across the entirety of the audio models, where we help create text-to-speech, so create and bring those emotions across, but also speech-to-text to understand speech around you, or build the orchestration of how those pieces come together. And then build two platforms on top of that research. One platform for creative industries, so helping all the way from individuals on YouTube to help them create voiceovers, anyone from Lex Friedman to some of the biggest creators, to voiceovers and localization with companies like Disney or Meta. So that's on the creative side. And on the agentic side, we help turn from what was a static experience into an interactive one. So this can mean a traditional enterprise like Deutsche Telekom working with us to create voice agents and customer service, but it can also mean company like Masterclass figuring out a new ways of education, where now, instead of having just the course, you can also speak with some of the incredible talent. So you can be learning cooking while having Gordon Ramsay, AI Gordon Ramsay, teach you how to get better. Or you can have Chris Voss negotiate with you live so you can actually practice negotiation. So we are seeing that kind of shift across the industry on the creative side and the entertainment, where what was previously static can now be interactive with the help of voice agents, and that's what we are focused. And as a company today, we serve millions of creators to thousands of our enterprises. We happily crossed the year at 330 million in revenue. Wow. But the happy coincidence is we just announced that on Bloomberg actually a couple of days ago, so it feels like homecoming.
Yeah, what I love also about that is the natural language speech and just the idea of a natural user interface makes the technology more accessible, which is great. But we're at Davos, where the world's elite, based on this audience, global business leaders, policymakers, are convening. Why do you think, Cecilia, it's important for us to be able to have this discussion around the future of media and entertainment here?
Well, I think that when we talk about the media and entertainment industry, we don't just talk about the industry itself, but also media and entertainment is bringing a lot of the impact to the global economy. So take one of the movies published in 2025 as an example called K-pop Demon Hunter. And I'm sure a lot of the kids actually watched it globally. And so it not only creates a significant amount of the viewerships globally, but also it itself actually creates more than $1 billion in just the IP derivatives. So then when we talk about the entire media and entertainment industry, we really have to consider the entire IP derivatives, licensing rights, and IP content is actually bringing also to the entire global society. So now, as of today, AI is creating a lot of the new emerging markets. And some of the markets include like AI animations and video podcastings. So for example, video podcasting, very interesting market. Podcasting itself is already a massive market. Like in 2025, I remember there's like over 584 million of the users actually listens to podcasts every year. And there's like more than 51% of the US population really watches video podcast. So video is really becoming a driving force out there. And now, like, how do we really use AI to even push it a bit forward? It's really a meaningful market share from the traditional streaming, and it really reflects how users are changing behaviors when they really consume long form of the content or short form of the content. So I think that is something that's really meaningful, and it's a growing massive market. So just take this growing market economy itself, and plus all the IP derivatives that we just talked about. I think it's in the next 10 years, it's gonna be glamorous. And on the other side, over the past 100 years, whenever we talk about entertainment or like content or whatever it is, there's one thing that would never change, which is storytelling. So by human nature, we would always want to tell a good story, no matter what technology it is. So that's why we have Hollywood, and that's why we have like TikTok and all the content platforms. And I think that entire like storytelling market is just massive. So that itself, plus all the the content and all the growing content market, it's a huge, massive market that we have to really look into, and the next younger generations would really play with that. So that's why here we're at Davos. We have to really talk about the entertainment and content industry, and also all the impacts it's bringing to the world.
Yeah, I was timing in ourselves and seeing how long it's going to take us to bring up AI in the opening remarks in about 5 minutes, right? And we're going to hear a lot about it. The one thing I wanted to ask you is this term AI slop is coming up a lot, right? And this idea of content that's not up to par, not up to quality, that maybe, for lack of a better word, junk. What do you think about that, and how do you integrate that into your business and strategy?
Do you want to talk about that? Because I think this really relates to voice.
Sure, Madi.
Actually.
Yeah, no,
100%. 100%. I think first I would echo what Cecilia said about the storytelling being such an important part of any part of the creation process.
Yeah.
But like when I think about AI slop, I think an entire end-to-end AI-generated content where the predominant goal is to generate views or clicks. So there's no human integration. You try to generate that and get as many views as possible. And personally, I'm not excited for that future. There's this great book, Fahrenheit 451, where they speak about effectively all the humans being fed that content at all times, where like AI slop is effectively that version of that. So a scary proposition. I believe in a version where you have, instead of kind of AI doing the work end to end, you have AI doing the work middle to middle. So you have us, storytellers, humans, part of the equation where you need to tell something that, whether it's your emotional story, something that is attached that actually makes you excited to listen to it, but that the tooling around you exists to make it easy and possible. Right. And as we think about building a creative platform, as Utopai thinks about building the platform, I think it's a lot about giving that and making that easy for the creators around you to harness that technology. So that's kind of the easier part, which I think is important for us as a company and where we optimize our energy, how we can build and get as high quality rather than as easy as possible.
Yeah.
And you need that element of craft to actually get through that tooling. The interesting part is when you start shifting from, you have the original content and then you start creating derivatives that might be personalized to your liking or might be localized to your language.
Yeah.
And here you do go through the automatic process of AI doing most of the work. I don't think that's slow because you still needed the original story to be told, but it can be an incredible one too.
Right. And so you're really thinking about how that's integrated and that philosophy is integrated into your tools, both for voice and audio.
I think in general, like you can optimize for both part of the equation. Do you try to give you tools to get as high quality, or do you give you tools to make it as easy? Of course, you need to balance a little bit of both, but in our case, like the first one takes precedence of like, how can I make it so you can create the highest quality audiobook you would like, the best voiceover for a movie, localize that movie to another language while still getting the voice across, rather than how do I create 1,000 videos on a click that will potentially get to the audience and find the right viewer here and there.
Right.
And the first one, I think, is the first key. Of course, like maybe a little bit more on the controversial side. Over time, I do think there will be pockets of entertainment which will be auto-generated. Yeah. But I think still, as I think about that future, the IP part will be critical, where you want to know the characters, you want to know the creator, you want to know the story, and then it's important. Or you want to attach it to something personal that you're interested in.
Implicit in what you're saying, and Cecilia, I want to ask you this, is this disruption of the structure that exists within the creative and media and entertainment industry, and the structure of creatives and talent and just the overall value chain. What do you think about that structural shift that's happening as a result of this AI and film production in entertainment?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I 100% agree with what Mata just said, because for us, we strictly prohibit the output of the usage of the output in the AI to really be used in like scams, right? Or some of the some of the very bad consequences things. Right. And on the other side, we do believe that the core for everything is really storytellings and creators. So we really want to protect that, and really wanted to protect how humans are just telling stories and what is the ideas out there and what is the IP behind it. So we're really doing a lot like human in the loop to protect this entire process. And to answer to this question, we do see two changes right now happening in the worldwide, and especially in the creative and content industry. One change is really the entire global redistribution of the creative power. Yes. And another change is the entire global redistribution of the globalized content. So, just talk about the globalized content, first of all. Hollywood is always the leading force for a lot of the movie pieces or entertainment content out there. But now, especially in 2025, that we've started to see a trend where there's a lot of Korean and Japanese, Asian content that's actually going to international, and that goes so viral. So we do believe that in the next 10 years, and because of the technology and everything and all the tools and agent, we do believe that there's going to be tens and hundreds of the billions of the Asian content that's going to really contribute to the market growth, and especially global market growth. And on the other side, Europe, which I really love, and I think that Europe is having its great advantage anyways, because Europe is such a great historical place, birthplace really for arts. So now with all the technology and everything, Europe has this great chance to really build Hollywood movies, art house movies, and big productions and big films and etc. So that is the entire shift for the global reconstruction for the content. Yeah. And in terms of the global well, like redistribution for the creative power, well, we do think that for professionals, especially for a lot of the directors, and now in the future, they do have a chance to even create something even larger without any budget limitations. And now writers can become, big producers. And photographers can also become great producers. So there's not going to be a limitation for a job title anymore. There's going to be an era for one studio, I think like one studio, one movie out there.
Right.
And on the other side, kids and all the, the general creators, they could also create a beautiful story out there and a beautiful entertainment piece out there. So, and they could really create, contribute to the entire IP landscape. So we do think that, there's also going to be the era for like one person, one film very soon. And that is very exciting. And that is really the next chapter that we're looking into.
Yeah, so the creative power is really shifting in that regard. You brought up distribution, and I want to come back to the structural shifts with you too, Madi. But you brought up distribution and this idea of audience behavior changing, consuming content and information, entertainment in a variety of different ways. How are you thinking about that Utopai Studios sort of strategy and distribution model in that regard?
Well, that's a good question. Well, so if we really look into the entire global content market, I think there's always a very clear pattern behind it, which is technology is really driving every single creative waves. So think about from sound to colors, then to digitals and CGIs and et cetera, and especially Toy Story back to 1995. And it drives more than 400 million of the box office and in global that time. That's the first time, proven that technology plus creativity together could really produce something amazing. And so if we talk about AI plus the creativity today, I think that if we really introduce AI properly to the creativity, we're really going to see a lot of the next level of the creativity, even next genres and next format. So, well, there's two aspects into that. One aspect is we will see the diversity of the content. There's going to be more quantity, more quality, and there's going to be more creators out there, whether the professional creators or the general creators. And they would create massive amount of the content. So this entire demand for the content industry and the global growth for the content industry is going to be huge. On the other side, IP for the past 100 years is always very hard to capture, and especially in Hollywood and in the entire content landscape, because it's subjective, it's unpredictable, and there's a lot of investment. So now, if we really take the IP life cycle much shorter because we have great technology really produce the IP much quicker, then we do have a great chance to build an entire empire of an IP landscape. So now, every single year, there's more than like 262 million of the hours of the videos uploading to the YouTube, and every day there's more than 34 million of the videos created by TikTok. And if we just take 0.01% of that and convert them into IP or franchises, that's going to be a massive growing market. And that's the way we really want to look into that. Act as the next, turn this entire or transform this entire IP game into an infinite game, so that there's more people could really produce that and contribute to the global economy.
Yeah. I love the phrase empire of IP landscape. What I wanted to ask you, Madi, is the same question around structural shifts that are recalibrating the balance of power between creators and talent and traditional models like the big studios. But I want to add another point in there as you answer that question, which is this responsibility that you have with using AI and this notion of ethical AI. So tell me about this balance of power shifting and how you're thinking about ethical AI within that context.
Yeah, as we think about the change that's coming, there's of course the model that existed today will shift, will be different. As we think about our role in that model, we want to disrupt some of the industry, but we want to do it together with the industry too. So we want to bring industry along on doing that. What it means concretely, as we think about some of the examples in our work, one of the pieces that you really need when you create a voice is a wide diversity of voices across styles, about gender, age, different accents, different dialects. One thing that we've built at ElevenLabs is effectively a marketplace where everybody can create their voice. You go through authentication flow to make sure it's your voice. You can share it, and then you can earn money as a result. So anybody here can create a voice too. But we now have a brewing community of over 10,000 voices that are part of that ecosystem that you can use for your projects. And that's an interesting model where both the voice talent, the creators, the creatives in the industry can actually benefit both creating easier with the diversity of what's possible, while still the community actually earns money on top of that. We paid, coincidentally, $11 million back over last year. So that's actually going in a good direction. Now we're thinking about how to take it a step further. We recently partnered with iconic voice of Sir Michael Caine to work and bring him into the fold where he will work on specific projects too. Unlocking, of course, you can do it passively, but still you will accept the projects that you want to take place and take role. So that's kind of the first part. The second thing of how the dynamics change, which is very interesting, very quickly, I don't frequently tell about some of the origin of ElevenLabs, but a very crazy thing, I'm from Poland originally, my co-founder is from Poland, and there is a very particular thing in Poland that if you watch a foreign movie in Polish language, all the voices, whether it's a male or female voice or any character in a movie, get narrated with one single voice. So you have like one voice narrating the entire movie. And you would think this was the only thing that you grew up with. No, it still happens today for majority of the content. Of course, the future that we imagine is different. You will have original voices, original intonation, emotion coming across. And that's, of course, changing so much in how you are creating content, distributing content, how the rights will exist in that process, who controls those rights. It's an interesting question. And similarly, we spend a lot of time. Recently, we worked with another icon, Matthew McConaughey, on his newsletter, which he read in English. And then we brought it to Spanish, so you can enjoy Matthew's voice in Spanish. Wow. And it sounds incredible. And actually seeing that change is great. But to your point, across all of that, one of the key parts is that you want to always have the transparency, whether it's AI-generated content or not. So you want the provenance. Is it AI? How was it generated? And be able to trace it back. When across all of that project, our community relies on us making sure it's used in the right way. So moderation on both against fraud and scams, against abuse is critical. And free building tools to help others detect is it AI or not. Right. Especially now with a lot of the open source technology, helping the wider industry to adopt that is important. And if we do it right, hopefully all of us will be able to speak other languages and still have that authentication that this is your voice, your language. And maybe to finish this one off, there's of course a lot of the public and private sector. One of the incredible examples of that was working with Lex Friedman, a podcaster who was interviewing world leaders. And a good example was him speaking with Narendra Modi on the podcast, and we brought that all to English. And for the first time, you could hear for 3 hours the whole conversation in English and kind of experience that in a completely different way. And I'm sure across the next few days, we'll have conversations where not everybody speaks the same language, and how incredible it would if you could actually hear the same intonation, emotion as the original. It's
incredible. Cecilia, same question for you that I asked before about the ethical AI and how Utopai Studios thinks about that in your own model.
Well, I think I just wanted to add one more point to that because I know that we're running out of the time. So I think that it is important for the AI to tell a truth, because now if you don't really do any, so for example, like we're really telling the story of the born of the Mexico. So there could be different sides to the story there, and there could be biases to there. So then how do we really train a model and there's like properly human in the loop to make sure that the story is really telling the truth and is really recovering what's there in the history. So I do think that this is something that we really love to do because of our position in the entire content and media landscape. Now we really wanted to make sure that there's like always human in the loop when it comes to trainings and productions and et cetera, so that the AI is really telling what's going on there and what is really there without any biases. So that's something that I do definitely agree with Matti, and which is something we're doing too.
So with a minute left, I wanted to just ask you what the future vision is for Utopai.
Well, I think first of all, video agent in the next 3 years is going to take off. And that is definitely what we're focusing on. On the other side, we wanted to build the best cinematic storytelling models for all the storytelling creators in the world. Right. And I think the machine could understand human more better and better. So now, like there's a lot of the complex steps in the filmmaking, and especially in the professional content creating, when you just use human language to really engage with it. Right. And I think that AI could understand it properly, really well, and with accuracy, consistency, and great user experience there. And that is something that we're trying to do, to simplify the process as much as possible, and to drive another growth out of it. Marty?
Yeah, Marty, what's next for ElevenLabs?
Last year was about solidifying ourselves as voice of technology. As you think about the next years and years ahead, it's transforming how we interact with that technology, bringing that on our terms, so technology understands us in the way we want it to understand us. We think it will be an incredible shift where you'll break down language barriers, you'll be interacting with technology around us through voice, and we hope we can make this possible and happen for the brands, creators, and enterprises around the world.
Yeah. I think in general, we both wanted to make sure the technology is accessible and democratized to everyone and every creatives in this world.
Well, thank you for joining us. You both are on the precipice of really big transformation. So thank you for sharing your stories with us. Thank you for opening the programming, and great to talk to you.
Ashish, thank you.
Thank you so much.